Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for this St. Patrick's Day edition of my random horror reviews. This is my second year of doing an episode for St. Patrick's Day. I was looking for something green to wear. I guess it turns out I don't own many green shirts or jumpers. I ended up picking this one out, but I think it's fucking like low-key blue. So I don't know if I had like a colorblind moment or something, but I could have sworn it was green. Either way, today's movie I decided to go with 1994's Leprechaun 2. As I said, this is my second year of doing an episode for St. Patrick's Day. And last year I did the first Leprechaun movie, so I thought why not continue the pattern and do Leprechaun 2. But St. Patrick's Day is also a holiday with not many options for horror movies to choose from, so Leprechaun 2 was a pretty safe bet. But either way, not only is this episode a St. Patrick's Day edition, it is also episode 94 of my random horror review series. So this is my 94th review on my YouTube channel, and that means episode 100 is coming up soon. And I wanted to do something special for episode 100, and I was thinking of ideas. So at the end of this video, if it interests you at all, I'm going to explain what I'm going to do for episode 100 and how you can get involved if you would like to. As I said, that will be at the end of this review, at the end of the video, so stick around if that is anything that interests you at all. As I said, you can get involved if you would like. But either way, let's get into my St. Patrick's Day edition review of Leprechaun 2. So this movie actually does take place on St. Patrick's Day, which is a nice change because if I remember correctly, I don't think the first movie actually does, but it's a good start that this movie actually does take place on St. Patrick's Day. And this movie goes for a different approach. Instead of the leprechaun looking for his missing gold like he is in the first movie, and that still does come into play at a certain point in this movie, but instead this time the leprechaun is looking for a bride. This family curse from centuries ago catches up in present day with this young lady who was part of the bloodline that was cursed, and she gets stalked and captured by the leprechaun, and he is forcing her to be his bride. But then our main character Cody, which is also the boyfriend of this girl, is trying to get her back with the help of his greedy scam artist friend Morty. So that's pretty much the story that we have in this one. So let's get into my St. Patrick's Day edition episode of my random horror reviews for Leprechaun 2. So like I said there in my introduction, they go with a different approach storyline wise in this one, which I actually really like. They could have easily done a repeat of the story from the first film. You know, the gold goes missing, somebody finds it, the leprechaun wants it back and kills people along the way. They could have easily done it again. It's still early enough in the franchise where that idea isn't too played out either. The story that we get in this one is actually something you'd kind of expect for something further down the line in the franchise, like a part 5 or a part 6, where, you know, looking for the gold is getting a little bit played out and you want to give a fresh take on, you know, a different story or something. But I actually really respect the idea to give it something different, especially so early on. This movie only came out a year after the original. So again, I really like the story that goes on with this one. Like I also said in my intro, the looking for the gold still comes into play at a certain point, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is him looking for his bride and holding this girl captive and everything, and I'm all on board with that story. Where this movie first has me confused is with how the leprechaun comes back in the first place. And I actually don't remember it being this funny, because this is a movie that I have seen a couple of times before. But I was actually laughing about how the leprechaun came back in this movie because I was a little bit confused. So if I remember right, and I should remember right because I've seen the first film plenty of times, the leprechaun dies at the end of the first movie and he's at the bottom of a well. In this movie, he's resurrected via whiskey being poured on his grave, which first of all, I'm all on board with. I think that's okay. We've definitely seen weird resurrections in horror films before. But he's resurrected via whiskey being poured over his grave and under a tree. Why is he being resurrected under a tree when he died at the bottom of a well? I was a little bit confused. I was like, you know, does this movie take place before the first? But if you know how the first movie starts, that doesn't make sense. So I was trying to figure it out in my head, but I think it's just one of those weird things that you gotta suspend your disbelief with. And I mean, out of all franchises to suspend your disbelief with, I think the Leprechaun franchise is perfectly fine to do that with. But to make it even weirder, let's get into the curse that is put on this girl, because it's from centuries ago, relating to revenge on her bloodline and so on, so on. It's sort of explained at the start of the movie. And there's a whole lore explaining why the leprechaun gets a bride on a certain occasion, and how he gets them is if they sneeze 3 times with no one blessing them. So it needs to be on a certain day, they need to sneeze 3 times, and no one needs to say bless you or God bless you between their sneezes. So it's strange and it's goofy, but again, it doesn't feel out of place in a Leprechaun film. It actually adds to the charm. I think it's pretty cool. But when our lead girl in this movie, Bridget, finally sneezes 3 times, it's fucking hilarious. So she sneezes 3 times, very casual. Her boyfriend Cody goes to say bless you after her third sneeze, and the leprechaun makes this phone cord fly off the wall, wrap around his neck, and strangle him. And it's so fucking hilarious. Like, it's one of those things where you just need to see how ridiculous it is and how funny it is, because it's very casual. She just sneezes a third time, he goes to say it, and this cord just violently flies off the wall and strangles him. And it's just so fucking random, but it's hilarious, and I thought that deserved an explanation as well. So moving on from the storyline stuff and getting into other things now, this movie, like I said before, is one that I have seen a few times before, and I've always sort of had a soft spot for this movie. I do like it, even though the general consensus with most people is that it's not very good. And I'm not saying like I have this crazy huge love for Leprechaun 2, but whenever I'm talking about the Leprechaun franchise with people, I'm always like, yeah, I like Part 2, Part 2 is pretty good, and they're like, no, Part 2 sucks. But I do have a soft spot for this movie. I do like somewhat like it. Even though this time around it just didn't quite hit on the same level. I think it was because I haven't seen it in a little while, and I was remembering back on it, and I was like, yeah, no, I remember this part, and that was pretty good. But in reality, it's actually not the greatest movie, so I think my hopes were just a little bit too high. By all means, I still had a good time rewatching the film, but as I said, just didn't hit on the same level. Even though the first movie is a low budget B movie of sorts, this movie's budget is even lower, and technically it's less impressive as well. But that can be redeemed as long as you have a good cast and a good story, which it's kind of mixed on those results as well. So we'll start with the acting. The acting in this one is very split. Our female lead in this movie, Bridget, her acting is not the greatest. Our male lead, Cody, is a lot better, but his acting is still probably fine at best. The two best performances that we have in this movie is one, Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun. Doesn't need any explanation. Everyone knows how great he is as the Leprechaun in this franchise. But the old guy who played Morty was also great in this movie. The guy who played Morty is so good that he made Cody's character better, because they have this banter going on and this bond and added charisma, so he kind of made Cody's performance even better. But to stay on Morty, the character himself is great too. He's like this greedy con man who's always chasing money, and that eventually catches up with him in this brutal way, which I always think of when I think of this movie. I always think of his death scene. Sorry, that was kind of a spoiler, but it does catch up with him in the most awesome way ever. But he's also got to be one of the funnier characters too. There's this one scene in the movie, it's got to be the best joke in the movie. This security guard catches him from breaking into this building that they're trying to get into, and the security guard goes, "Watch it, I've had 60 hours of combat training." And then Morty just punches him square in the face, and he goes, "Should have been 65." And it was the best fucking line in the movie. I started pissing myself. But yeah, the acting and the technicality of how this movie's done is a little bit mixed. Going through the kills in this movie, and though I just briefly skimmed over a really solid kill being Morty's, and sorry again about the spoilers, you guys know I hate giving away spoilers in my reviews, but Morty's kill was really cool. The rest though are a little bit disappointing. Some really cool stuff is suggested, like there's one that has to do with a lawnmower that would have been really cool if we saw it, because it happens off screen. They could have done some really cool stuff with the gore, but it feels like it's being held back. I'm guessing probably budgetary reasons. Also, the third act where we're in the Leprechaun's lair kind of bored me the most this time around. It just feels like there's not too much exciting going on in the third act, or I guess the final part of this movie. Like I said before, this movie upon rewatch was a little bit mixed for me. I like the story. The acting is a little bit inconsistent though. The kills could have been better. The budgetary stuff, I guess limitations on the budget. It was fine with what we got. I still like this movie. I think it's perfectly fine to rewatch. It just didn't hold up maybe as well as I remember it being. I can't remember what I gave the first film last year. I think I gave it a 6 or a 6.5 out of 10, which for my rating system, that is a pretty solid score. Like, that's definitely, something that's rewatchable or worth checking out if you haven't. Like, it's a score that's above average. Like I said, I can't remember what I gave part 1 last year. I think it was a 6 or a 6.5. That movie is better than this one. I'm happy to say that now. I was 50-50 on it, but rewatching this film, I would say that part 1's better. But regardless, I'm going to give part 2 a generous 6.5. I was thinking a 6, but then as I was filming this review, I was thinking of the funny stuff and the stuff that didn't make sense, but that's the reason why I kind of like this movie. But yeah, 6.5 for now. I'm a sucker. I fell for Leprechaun 2, but as I said, I'm happy to admit the first film is the better of the two, but regardless if I gave that one a 6 and I'm giving this one a 6.5, I am saying that the first film is the better of the two. But I guess I'll see you guys next year for Leprechaun 3 for St. Patrick's Day. But like I said in my introduction, now I'm going to explain what I'm going to do for my 100th episode of my random horror reviews. I was thinking, what am I going to do for my 100th episode? I have to do something. I was contemplating, okay, because it's my 100th episode, do I pick a movie that I really love and want to share with you guys? But then I remembered, I started YouTube just as a hobby, just as something to do. I love horror movies, I love talking about them, and if I can share them with other people, go for it. I didn't intend on getting lots of subscribers, and I feel like I do have a lot of subscribers just because I was happy to have 10, but now I have 300 and something, which I think is really cool. So I was like, okay, I want to have you guys involved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my 100th episode a viewer's choice. And how you guys can be involved is just get in the comments. As I said, this is my 94th episode, so from here on out, there's 5 more till my 100th episode. On my next random horror reviews and this one, just comment what movie you want to see me review for my 100th episode, and how I will decide who gets the viewer's choice, what movie's going to be picked. I will just pick randomly one of the films. Don't need to put the same movie over and over in the comments, because once one movie is put there, I'll just count it as one. But feel free to suggest as many movies as you want. Maybe no more than 5 or something, just so, other people have a chance if they recommend one. But, for example, if you want Nightmare on Elm Street, don't put Nightmare on Elm Street 10 times, because I'm only just going to put it into this random shuffle once. And as I said, I will, by my 100th episode, I'll pull a title out. I will also, in that episode, say who suggested this movie. If you don't want me to, just say in the comment, don't drop my YouTube name or whatever. But I'll give a shout out to whoever gets the movie for the 100th episode. I'll explain this for every episode coming up to my 100th, just so you guys know, but I thought that was a cool idea. Make my 100th episode a viewer's choice. So that was enough rambling. Hopefully that explanation for my 100th episode made sense and people want to get involved. I don't normally have too many people comment on my videos. The people that do are my consistent commenters. Thank you guys. So I'm guessing those guys might, but if you've just stumbled across my channel, feel free to get involved. So thank you guys for watching this St. Patrick's Day edition of my random horror reviews, and I'll see you for another episode soon. Peace.